kiddos. Good to see you. It's Miss Crum and Miss Pearson. Welcome back for our second lesson. This is lesson 1.2, and you're going to be working with both of us. Please make sure that you're sitting and working with our video recording for 50 minutes of uninterrupted time, just like you would in your content classes, but on your own. All right, so today scholars will be able to identify the 5 types of lines that artists work with so we can contrast those different marks found in the world. If you're ever wondering how artists can create things that look like the real world, it starts with lines. So our agenda today is first thing, we're going to do our 6-hat sketch with an artist's main ingredient, what they work with, lines. Number 2, we're going to learn the 5 types of lines with visual journaling, just like we did in the first lesson. Number 3, you're actually going to practice along with me different line characteristics and some cool Zentangle patterns. Number 4, you're going to create your own Zentangles featuring the 5 types of lines. And then finally, the 5th and last thing you'll do is show that you can identify the 5 types of lines in Flipgrid and your exit ticket. Those are your 2 different grades. What's up next, Miss Pearson?
All right, so you guys know what to do. This is the same format as last week. You are going to get your sketchbook in hand. Hopefully by now you have gotten your sketchbook. At least for 5th graders, you have picked up your supplies. This brown beautiful thing is your sketchbook, in case you didn't know. You're going to open up to a new page, and we are going to get it all set up just like we did last week. Remember, at the top, you are going to write your do nows. All right, I'm going to do that right now. Do now. And don't forget that you got to put A and B, because for our do now, we have 2 parts, part A and part B. Next, you're going to cut your sketchbook in half. So I'm going to go ahead and do that as well. Doesn't have to be perfect. Just going to freehand. Boom. You can see I cut that in half. All right, and what's going to go below onto the bottom half is your visual journaling portion. Go ahead and label that visual journaling. Right, we are doing this with you in real time because we want that pacing to be just right. So as I'm creating this, you are creating this too. All right, so now that we have completed our sketchbook, we are going to start with the first half, the do now 6-hat sketch. Remember our 6 hats for thinking. The first one for part A is the creative hat, the green hat, creative thinking. I'm going to go ahead and start the timer. And we're going to start with part A, where it says recreate this image by drawing the lines you see. Now, I know there's a lot of lines there. Don't worry, don't get overwhelmed. Do the best you can. Think on the right side of your brain, not by drawing what you think you see, but by drawing what you actually see in front of you. If that's a little too much, start maybe in a corner or a certain section that you feel like you're most drawn to. I'm going to go ahead and start this 4-minute timer, and I am most drawn to the top left corner.
Me too.
Really?
That's what I'm drawing now.
Wow, look at that. All right, so I'm recreating, focusing on those lines used. Yeah,
switch it.
Go. We got that dot cam up. Miss Crum is doing a wonderful job showing us. All right, so I'm starting with that basic outline.
I'm seeing a lot of curved lines, aren't you, Miss Pearson?
Totally, I'm seeing a lot of curved lines. I'm seeing a couple zigzag.
I love that we get to draw together. Us, the scholars.
I know, I can't wait to see what their drawings look like. All right, so we are working on still part A. Seeing some diagonal lines. Remember, you are following along. If you ever need extra time, you can always stop this video, but we set these timers and we follow along with you because we want it to be paced just right. Remember, even as artists, we gotta make sure that we're pacing ourselves.
That makes sense, just like writers pace themselves when they write.
Exactly. Right on. Using that right side of the brain, really focusing on what we see.
What's really cool about this is because I'm kind of recreating this artist's work, it helps me remember it.
Oh yeah, it definitely helps you to remember all the details involved because you're having to really focus on those details in order to recreate. Also gives me an appreciation for this artist.
That's what I was thinking. This is hard work.
Ooh, I found a zigzag line. All right, so we're working up to about 1.5 minutes. I'm actually gonna go ahead and finish up part A, kind of wrap up some of those things. And then I'm gonna move on to part B. Remember, we gotta pace ourselves. So we got about 1 minute left to move on to part B. Part B is where you put on your white thinking hat, which is just the facts, and name the types of lines you drew. If you were listening carefully, Miss Crum and I were actually listing off some of those lines. So do the best you can. Maybe you can make up some lines. Think about what lines were used. I definitely heard curved. I heard diagonal.
And it almost seems like the lines were like moving or vibrating. That's what it kind of reminded me of.
Ooh,
vibrating lines.
Vibrating lines. I would say organic lines.
Good word.
Thank you. And go ahead and start finishing up. We have 15 seconds left. And when that timer goes off, pencils will go down and we will be tracking the screen. In 3, 2, 1. Oh, pencil down. Tracking screen. All right, fantastic. All right, so you have successfully completed part A and part B of your Do Now. So you created some lines over here. Maybe you did the top left corner, maybe you did the bottom corner, maybe you did somewhere in the middle. Doesn't matter, whatever you felt drawn towards. And then you completed part B, which were the different types of lines. Fantastic job, Ms. Crum. Looks amazing. Now we are gonna do the bottom half of our sketchbook, which is titled Visual Journaling. And that's exactly what we're gonna do. We're gonna visual journal.
All right, guys, you guessed it. Today's all about lines. So for our visual journaling, remember, great creators know to do 2 things. They write down their notes, but they also draw their ideas. So we'll be doing both of those. Plus, listen, you're going to be seeing these terms again in your exit ticket, so take good notes now. So let's go ahead and start our visual journaling. All right, so what are we visually journaling today? You're going to be working along with Miss Pearson, following my voice, following the screen. Let's write down these terms. The 2 vocabulary words you're going to write down first are line and contrast. So line, the definition I want you to write, is a path or a mark made by a moving point. It's a path or a mark made by a moving point. Just like the point of Miss Pearson's pencil is moving, she's creating those lines left behind. Go ahead and also write down 5 types of contrasting lines. Those are vertical, horizontal, diagonal, curvy, and zigzag. Excellent. You're just writing down the definitions right now. Don't worry about drawing anything just yet. We'll get to that. Just writing the definitions. Now, just like in the 6-hat sketch, we drew lots of different types of lines. That is what we call contrast. So a contrast is a rule that artists follow to show differences in their work. So when we were creating that sketch, we didn't only use curvy lines, right? We didn't only make thin lines. Some of those lines were a little bit thicker. Some of them were a little bit longer. That's what contrast is. We'll be practicing contrast here in a couple of minutes after we finish our visual journaling. So let's talk about vertical, horizontal, diagonal, curvy, and zigzag lines. This is where you can start drawing, my friends, just like Miss Pearson is. Vertical lines, those are lines that go up and down. Draw those lines, vertical, up and down, exactly. What's really great about these lines is it gives the appearance of height because they're perpendicular to the earth, extending upwards to the sky. You can see in the architecture of this building, those blue beams are vertical. You should be drawing those vertical lines just like Miss Pearson is now. Great. All right, the next type of line are horizontal lines. Horizontal lines are lines that go side to side. Think of the horizon of the sun hitting the ground, right? It goes from left to right, side to side. What I love about horizontal lines is they suggest a feeling of rest because those objects are parallel to the earth. And that's how we are when we are at rest. So horizontal lines go side to side. Diagonal lines, these lines are neither vertical nor horizontal, but they go from corner to corner. They're slanted, corner to corner. Objects in a diagonal position feel kind of unstable and feel like they're moving because it looks like they're about to fall or they're already in motion. You can see that the grades over here to the left are showing diagonal lines. All right, next type of lines, zigzag lines. These lines are jagged. Think of broken glass, right? They slant. Yeah, there are some diagonal lines, but they're all connected as they're moving. And they really show action and excitement. Think about a comic book. When someone's throwing a punch, bam, it's surrounded with those jagged zigzag lines. And the last type of line that we're going to use and draw, just like Miss Pearson's doing in the video, are those curvy lines. These are lines that bend. There's no straightness to them. They bend. They're rounded. They're wavy. They're loopy-looping. They're spiral. And they suggest comfort and ease. So now that we know the 5 types of lines, let's take a look back at the artist from the Six Hat sketch and learn a little bit more.
All right, so here is our lines with the masters. We have Corey Barksdale, and if you notice that there is an image here that's very familiar to you guys, or at least should be, right? That's right, in our Do Now, we did a line design practice, and that was actually a art piece by Corey Barksdale. He is a contemporary artist born right here in Nashville. Whoop, whoop. And now he currently lives in Atlanta, Georgia. He celebrates African American community by portraying love and strength through his portraits and abstract subject matter. So we're just going to take a moment to look at some of these. They're all so different, but one thing that he has in common is that he uses lines. And let me tell you, he uses a lot of lines. So as you can see, there are vertical, there are horizontal lines, there are diagonal lines, there are curvy lines, and finally there are zigzag lines. Awesome, fantastic. What do you notice, Ms. Crum?
I'm noticing that even though he's using all those different types of lines, even those lines themselves are different. Like some of them are a little bit more bold and stand out a little bit more to me. Some are thin, some are like long, some are short.
So what you're saying is that he used contrast, right?
Oh yeah, sure did. And you know what? That's what we're going to do next in our guided practice. So pick up those pencils again. You're going to work along with me. All right, so for our guided practice, turn to the next page. Get yourself a fresh sheet of paper there. And what we want to try to do, if you look at the screen, you'll see the picture on the left of the 5 types of lines. Yeah, sure, those are all correct, but they're kind of boring, right? There's not a lot going on. All the lines are looking the same. We want to do what Mr. Barksdale did as an artist and use some different characteristics, kind of like over here on the right side of the screen. You see long and broken lines. You see lines that are spaced close together and some are far apart. Some are thick, some are thin. those are going to be all of those different characteristics we're going to try now. So pencil's ready. All right, guys, so you're going to draw with me. You can see here that I've already started working with vertical lines, but something's different. There's contrast. I have long lines. I have dashed lines. Go ahead and create with me right now.
So I'm doing exactly what you're doing, right, Miss Crum?
Exactly. Many times we say, hey, do your own thing. Well, right now I want you to follow my guided practice right here. Cool. So long versus short lines, easy way to contrast your patterns. Now let's talk about line thickness. So if I want to use a thin line, I'll use just the point of my pencil. Easy peasy, right? But if I want to make a thick line with my pencil, I'm going to actually hold my pencil on its side and go back and forth, almost like I'm shading, just to make this line a little bit more bold. Sometimes what I'll do too is I will draw the line, and I'll draw another line right beside it, and then kind of just shade it in. Already you can see that that bold line draws your attention in. Nice way to show contrast. Another way you can show contrast is with the texture of your lines. So maybe I want to make a diagonal line that's a little fuzzy looking, like a little puppy. Or I can create those diagonal lines that are very smooth, just like that. So these are just a couple of different ways that you can contrast those types of lines. Ooh, another cool trick, before I forget, because I think Miss Pearson's going to say this too, is you can gradually make your lines a little closer together.
So contrasting the space, right?
Yeah, exactly. And this is a really cool way to make an illusion that something's like getting closer to you or farther away. Sweet. So now that we feel really confident with how we can contrast these different characteristics of the 5 types of lines, it's time to get down to studio time. Miss Pearson, it's all you.
All right, so now we're going to move on to our next fresh page. All right, so we are going to move over and onto a fresh new page. So go ahead and flip over. Now we got a blank page, right? Okay, so first thing we got to do is we got to set up our sketchbook. All right, so a couple things in order to set up our sketchbook is grab a ruler. If you do not have a ruler, then you can use a book or something of that sort as a straight edge when creating these lines and setting up our sketchbook. So I am going to first draw a diagonal line. I'm actually going to stop sharing the screen. Okay, so first thing is straight edge. We're going to use a horizontal line. Woo woo, look at that, already using our terms. So we're going to do a horizontal line and cut our sketchbook right in half. Boom. Like I said, if you don't have a ruler, you can use a straight edge of any sort, such as a book. And next, we are going to do 2 diagonal lines to create an X. So we'll have one cutting across here and one cutting across here. So I'm going to go ahead and draw that diagonal line. Remember, diagonal lines go from corner to corner, and that's exactly what we are doing. From corner to corner. All right, have a little bit of extra space, accidentally made. Hey, you know what? That's okay, that happens though. Look at that, Miss Pearson made a little bit of a mistake, but we are gonna learn from that. If you have this little bit extra space when you were creating your X, I'm just gonna fill that in.
A beautiful oops.
Beautiful oops is correct. Thank you, Miss Crum. Always supporting me. Always making me feel better.
Working the compass.
All right, so now that we have our horizontal line and our 2 diagonal lines, if you notice, that creates 6 slices, almost like a pizza. So we've got 6 slices that we're working with here, and we're going to do a different pattern in each slice. So that's going to take us right into our studio time. I'm going to go ahead and go back to the slides so you guys can see exactly what we're doing during our studio time. We have 3 loops that we are going to be working in. the first loop is you're going to create only vertical lines, a pattern using only vertical lines in the first slice. So I'm going to start over here and create a pattern only using vertical lines. Within that same 5 minutes, we're going to also create a pattern only using horizontal lines. So the second slice, only using horizontal lines. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and start the timer. And here we go. I'm going to start over here. You don't have to start here. You can start over here, 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 wherever you want to go. That is a-okay. Now, for my vertical lines, I'm tempted to just create stripes, but I don't want to do that, right? We want to make sure that we're creating contrast. So instead of just doing vertical stripes, I'm going to do a contrast of space. So I'll create one vertical line, and then I'll do a big space in between, then a little bit smaller amount of space, and smaller, smaller.
Now I'm using a ruler, but Ms. Pearson, I see that you're just freehanding those straight lines. Either's okay, right?
Oh yeah, you can use a ruler if you want to and you're a perfectionist, or if you're just like me and you just want to quickly do them and you trust your straight edge skills, go for it. All right, so it looks like all my lines got really close. Now I'm gonna space them out again.
We're just doing vertical lines right now, right?
Only vertical lines. Remember, you can create that contrast. It doesn't have to be like what I did. Remember, we're using our creativity this time. So I want to see what you guys can come up with, right? So I used contrast in creating differentiated space, but you can do either dashed lines, like broken lines, and then straight lines, and then broken lines, and then solid lines, or you can change up the thickness of those vertical lines, however you want to do it. So we are now at 3 minutes. You should be moving on to your second slice. Remember, we're only using horizontal lines. So for this one, I think I'm actually going to do a contrasting of broken versus solid horizontal lines. Here we go, and I'm doing freehand. Miss Crum is using a ruler. Remember, horizontal goes from side to side. If you forgot any of these terms, you can always go back to your visual journaling notes. And if you took really good notes, you'll be able to go back and be like, oh yeah, now I know exactly what I'm supposed to do, right? That's how we're successful in art class.
And Ms. Pearson, is it okay that my pattern looks different from your pattern right now?
Totally. In fact, I hope it does. I want it to look different. We're using that creativity.
Wearing my green hat?
Mm-hmm.
I almost spent too much time on my first pattern. I'm glad you're pacing us.
I got you. I know it's hard. You want to like make those designs perfect, especially Miss Crum, if you like to use that ruler. It's hard to get that pacing down.
I'm a bit of a perfectionist.
All right, so I'm finishing up my last slice. We are on 1 minute and 30 seconds. Hopefully you are still working. This also is really good pacing for the kiddos that go really fast. So make sure you're not going super fast because we don't want this to be sloppy, right? We want this to be an accurate representation of our incredible artistic skills. And for some artistic skills, it takes time, right?
Artist work is never done.
Mm-hmm. So if you finish, maybe you can go back and add some detail.
That's what I'm doing right now.
Nice, I love it. There we go. Yep, I still have 1 minute. And I already finished my first and my second slice. So I'm going to go back.
Who knew you could make such cool looking things with just like one type of line?
I know. It is amazing. It really pushes our creativity, right? Remember in the last lesson, we were all talking about creative thinking activities, and we started with a little squiggle and we turned it into something amazing. It's kind of what we're doing here. So we're taking just a single line and turning it into a pattern. Something amazing.
I love art.
Me too. Remember, only using, whoop, whoop. Hear that? You know what that means? That means our pencils are down and we're gonna be tracking the screen. So I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen again so you guys can see what is gonna happen in the second loop. All right, so for the second loop, we're gonna have another 5 minutes and we're gonna be working on this third and the fourth slice. So we're gonna be having 5 minutes for 2 slices. And for the third slice, we're gonna create a pattern only using diagonal. And then for the fourth, we're gonna create a pattern only using curvy. Hopefully you guys are kind of starting to see what we're doing here. We're practicing different line patterns. So I'm gonna go ahead and start that timer. We will begin.
Miss Pearson, you mentioned before something about Zentangles.
Yes, great point. So there's these cool things called Zentangles, in case you didn't catch it. And they are a way, basically a meditative practice where you're doing a repetitive process to help you just relax and bring peace. So that's what Zentangles are. They're different types of patterns that you can use during your meditation or while you're creating. Isn't that crazy? So we talk about true north and breathing as a form of meditation. Well, you can also do Zentangles as a form of meditation. I'm going to practice that with my third diagonal slice. Speaking of Zentangles, I was really inspired by this one Zentangle pattern. It was called Sunray. That's right, they have names for them. And it had the diagonal lines start in the corner and go out like a sunray. So that's what I'm doing here.
Ooh, it looks like everything's shrinking back into the distance. That's cool.
Yep. We actually use a lot of diagonal lines to create perspective in art. So, man, lines, I mean, they are just the foundation of everything. They are so important. So as you can see, I finished up that third slice. So now I'm going to move on to my fourth one. We still have about 3 minutes and 30 seconds. So I'm going to go to the fourth one, only using curvy. Now, my temptation is just to create a curvy wave, almost like an ocean. But I think I'm actually going to try something a little spicy. I know Miss Crum loves the spicy options.
Spicy!
So what I am going to do is create one curve, almost like a loop, and overlap and do multiple loops. Kind of looks like rocks stacked on top of each other. And remember, I'm only using curved lines. That's it. Isn't it amazing how many different patterns you can create?
For real. So how do you know when to start like the curve and where to end the curve? That's where I always get confused.
Wow, that's a really great question. So if you're creating specifically this type of pattern, what you'll do is you'll start in the middle of this curve, or like I'll say, like pretend it's like a rainbow. I'll start at the top of the arc of the rainbow and end onto the other arc of the rainbow. So it goes from middle to middle.
That makes sense.
Yeah, so the middle of the first one to the middle of the second one. That will definitely help you to overlap.
And that line is bending, just like it's supposed to, right?
Oh yeah, bending, curving. All right, let me check how much time we've got. All right, we got about a minute and 15 seconds. Remember, we're pacing ourselves. You're following along. If you ever need extra time, you can always pause this video, but I definitely recommend making sure that you're pacing yourself and following along within the same time frame as Miss Crum and I.
It's a fun challenge, you know?
Mm-hmm. Honestly, I feel so at peace doing this. I think we should do this for True North.
I love that idea. Tell your teachers. Send tangles for True North.
Maybe I'll do this for my pride.
Love it.
All right, so I'm finishing up my line patterns.
I'm adding in some spiral lines to those
Whoa,
feathers. I love a spiral.
she's getting spicier. Love it. Okay, so it looks like we've got about 15 seconds left. Go back and make sure you have finished out your design. If you finished early, like Miss Crum, she was going back and adding some extra deep detail, maybe darkening some of those lines. Are just finishing up, you should put your pencils down. The timer's going off, pencils down, we're tracking the screen.
Can we do some quick glows and grows?
That's a great idea. I love that. So I'll just leave this projector on and let's take a look at Miss Crumb's and do some glows and grows.
Oh, thanks.
All right. Wow.
Check it out.
Man, she totally outdid me. That is amazing.
Spicy.
Ah, I love it. All right, so let's look at your first and your second slice. So the first one was only vertical lines and the second one was only horizontal. So let's see. I would say the glow is that you really used some contrast in yours. Not only did you use a contrast in the length of the lines, but also the thickness. Here you used a contrast in, again, the length of the lines, and then also whether they were completely solid or broken. A grow that I would give you is, I noticed that you use some little circles here, which are really cute and are a fun pattern, but that's not vertical lines. Those are circles.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So what I can do is maybe like connect those lines and that can just be like little bumpy texture on the line.
Yeah,
Okay, cool.
sounds good. So that way we're maintaining the criteria for success.
That was a close one.
Whew, I know. Whew. I think it could probably work, but just to make sure that we're really following straight for the criteria for success and only using vertical lines, you can just, like you said, connect all of those and then just create it almost like a texture.
Totally. All right, we're almost done, right?
We
have
are
one more loop?
almost done.
We
We've
got this.
one more loop. All right, so we are going to go on to loop 3. We're going to keep some of those glows and grows in mind. Take a look at yours. Maybe you saw some glows and grows in your own creation. And we are going to do loop 3. So the 5th slice is going to be only using zigzag patterns. And then the very last slice is going to be a contrasting line pattern combining any 2 or more lines. I know Miss Crumb's going to love this one.
Woo!
Because she can combine and create as many designs as she wants within that. So the first one, only using zigzag, and then the last one is a combination of those different line patterns. Miss Crumb is clearly very excited.
Got it.
Whoop, whoop. Here we go. I'm going to go ahead and start the timer. All right. Here we go. First, or I should say 5th slice, zigzag. So, once again, I saw a Zentangle pattern. You guys can always just go online and Google Zentangle patterns, and you'll see all different types of patterns. And there was one that I saw that I was really inspired by that was a zigzag pattern. Started out in the middle, created one zigzag, then something like that, kind of like a lightning bolt. And then from there, I'm just going to repeat. Because remember, a pattern is where you take a design and you repeat it. So I'm repeating this zigzag line design. Taking my time, really working on that craftsmanship. Even when I'm doing, especially when I'm doing it freehand. Maybe you can think back to what our artist with the masters, what kind of lines did he use? Is there anything that inspired you?
It looks like mine's is creating an illusion of the paper itself being jagged.
Wow, I love that. You know, that's actually yet another thing that artists use lines for. So you know how I talked about last time when I created the diagonal lines and I said artists use diagonal lines a lot for perspective? You can also use lines to create an illusion, to make something seem up close, far away. You can make the lines almost move, like you said, moving the paper or creating texture on the paper. Lines are the #1 ingredient for how artists work.
Kind of like a chef can't make a meal without the right ingredients, right?
Totally.
An artist cannot create an artwork without the right elements. So the first one we're learning about is line. That makes sense.
Right. First thing. We're going to be spending this whole semester almost following a recipe, learning about those different ingredients, and then even how to mix the ingredients. Or if you are a chef, you would be baking those ingredients in order to create a cake. All right, so for pacing's sake, I only have 1 minute and 20 seconds. Look at that.
Oh my goodness.
So I got 1 minute and 20 seconds to do my last slice. Oof, Miss Pearson, you are not pacing very well. All right, I gotta think quick. What am I gonna do for my last slice?
I think I'm gonna start with one type of line and then add other different types of lines to that pattern.
You know what? That is exactly what I'm doing. That's crazy. Look at that. I started out with one type of line. I decided to do curvy or bended lines. You do not have to do that. Remember, we want to see your creativity. So you are not copying me. You're creating your own design for this one. So I just happen to choose bended.
Me too. Really? Great
Yeah.
minds think alike.
Oh, yeah. Now I'm going to use a different type of line. Gotta remember my pacing. Oop. All right, pencils down. And I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. I'm gonna go back to this slideshow. All right, so as you can see, we have finished up all 6 slices. It looks so cool, this final product with that whole page filled with only using vertical, only using horizontal, only using diagonal, only using curved, only using zigzag, and then a combination of my own design. Let's take a look at Miss Crumbs. What did you do?
Check it out. I'm feeling pretty proud of it, but I want to make sure that I'm an art superstar. All right, so we did exactly like what Ms. Pearson said. We have identified vertical, horizontal, diagonal, curvy, and zigzag. Zach, we've done it. We've also contrasted those different line characteristics to create aesthetically pleasing patterns. Remember the feedback that Ms. Pearson gave me? I had to go back and make some adjustments to actually make sure that those lines were doing what they were supposed to be doing. So you do the same thing. Also, make sure that you're using that precise craftsmanship so it looks neat, not rushed or sloppy. If you've hit all three of those criteria for success, take a look down at that effort-based rubric superstar. You have got a 100% A. Now, if you're missing some of those criteria for success, that's going to bring you down to a C or an F. Don't do that. So go back to your work if you need to before moving on to this next step to hit that CFS. Ms. Pearson, I'm looking good. I'm ready to turn in my work. How do we do it again?
Well, let me tell you, it is the same process that we did last week, right? We're going to maintain that consistency. Everything that we are doing, we're going to do for every single week. We are going to be using Flipgrid. Woo!
Love it.
I hope you guys liked Flipgrid. I love it. I know Ms. Crum loves it. It's so nice. It's just a wonderful way to be a little bit more personal and build those connections since we are in distance learning. So again, we're going to be creating that video. Here we go. Perfect. So again, you will have the link in Google Classroom. You will go into Google Classroom, click on the Flipgrid link, and it should, oh, you got to log in through Google. Don't forget, log in through Google.
Always.
Always log in with Google. Once you log in with Google, it will take you directly to lesson 1.2 line response. Boom, Miss Crum, what does it say that we need to do for our line response?
Okay, so I know I have to put on my yellow thinking hat. I've got to think happy thoughts. So what I first do is I hold up my studio project in front of the whole screen for 3 seconds. 1, 2, 3. Then I'm able to respond to that reflection. Well, the design I'm actually most proud of is probably my diagonal line because I contrasted lots of different characteristics of that line, and it's just fun to look at. Thanks.
Love it. Thank you so much for not only reading it, but also giving us a fantastic exemplar of what that video is going to look like when you create your response. So you will see that we have the step-by-step instructions. Step 1 is to hold it up for 3 seconds. Step 2 is to respond to it. When you are ready, you will hit the button that says record a response. Boom. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy, right? And we will do the same thing. Hey! And we will start the video and create our response. So I hope that you guys have a lot of fun with this. And please, 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 triple please, ultra mega please, email us if you have any trouble. We do not want Flipgrid tech issues or any sorts to be the reason why we don't get to see your work. We also don't want it to be a reason that you feel like you are not successful in this class. We want you to do well, and we want to see how well you are doing. So please, 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 once again, email us if you have any questions or concerns. Once you have recorded it, very last thing that you got to do, don't forget, this is so important, is you got to put your first and last name. So for me, my first and last name is Caitlin Pearson, and then you will also put your block. So if you look into your schedule, you will see there will say enrichment/break. That is your enrichment block. So that is the time that you will write at the end. So you'll say Caitlin, or for example, for me, it'll be Caitlin Pearson, and then maybe my enrichment block is block 2. So then I'll say Caitlin Pearson block 2. I noticed a couple of you guys were doing a wonderful job at writing your name, your first and last name, but I did see some missing blocks. So make sure you just include that. It makes it a little bit easier on our part. So thank you so much. You guys are amazing. Go ahead and just pause this video and do your Flipgrid right now.
And you're back. All right, you are almost done, guys. The last thing that you have to do is just show what you know, right? That was on our agenda. So log on to Elluminate, join with your email and password like you always do. Under assessments, you're looking for the assessment titled LS Exit Ticket 1.2, 5 types of lines. Complete that now and then return to the video when you're done. Go ahead and press pause, go to Elluminate.
And we're back. Woohoo! Look at you guys. Man, I cannot believe it. We did a lot this time. I'm just going to do a little run through. All right. So we did a do now and a visual journaling. Within that do now, we got to explore different types of lines, right? In our visual journaling, we talked about the definition and we got to create fun little pictures that go along with our visual journaling with those type of lines. Then we discussed contrast in our lines. After that, we went into our studio time and we got to practice all of those to create a lovely composition.
Love it.
So now that you feel confident with these different types of lines in our asynchronous lessons, you are ready for the next step. This is how artists work with their main ingredient, lines, in order to create movement and mood. Woo!
Take it easy, y'all.
Bye. See you guys next time.